Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to week 4 of our community calls. I cannot believe that we have made it through a whole month already. So I just shared my screen so that you can take a look at some of the stuff that I've got set up for you all today. But as usual, my name is Ankita, and I am uh, going to give you some updates on the informatics for the Community Food Resilience Project. Today is particularly exciting for us because we got our IRB approved. Hooray! And so it means that we can actually start to do some of the interviews that we've talked about. And so I'll be sharing a little bit of that with all of you, and giving you a little bit of a heads up on what's to come in the next week, approximately next week or two, and then a little bit of next steps of what we've got planned once the interviews start sort of taking off. And so today I'll go over a quick status update, just showing you a couple of things that we've changed on the website, some information on participating in the qualitative research study, a couple of quick next steps, open time for community discussion as usual, as well as a couple of ways for you to provide some feedback on how these have been going. So yeah, and if you have any questions, I think again, because we are a small group, feel free to chime in, stick your hand up, just unmute yourself and say stuff. And I will just start going through some of this information. So I wanted to start by maybe going back to all of the different pieces that we had, and I'll just full screen this so you can see it a little better, that we have active right now. So in Objective 1, the qualitative research study is officially in progress. So we got approval late late night on Friday. And so this week is when we're officially kicking things off on that front. We also have now scheduled the first meeting for the functional capacity mapping group. So the software group will be starting. So we'll have our first meeting this coming Monday on that front. And then I'll hopefully have some updates on the community pathways to food part of things for next week. We're also going to begin starting to assemble design teams for doing some of the farmer-centered and community-driven design of local food toolkits, but we will only have those starting once we have had a minimum of 10 interviews to make sure that we actually have some information to work with so that we're designing for our community and not just what we think we should be. And so that's just a quick overview of where we're at with respect to the different objectives. So a quick refresh on the qualitative study itself. I mentioned a couple of different goals that we have. Our short-term goal is to just try and get a sense of what the community food system challenges and opportunities are. I think a lot of these discussions have been very helpful for both pointing us to the right people to go then do follow-up conversations with, as well as providing a lot of information and rich context for some of the challenges that we're experiencing. But we're hoping that through this study, we can actually take a slightly more systematic approach to beginning to identify what those critical bottlenecks might be and what some of the opportunities to help out in our local food system would entail. And as you all know, the whole point of this is for us to then be able to directly inform the design of tools and processes. And that's why we're, now that the qualitative study is going to be started, we can start to actually have the different design teams begin to get assembled. So that's just a quick refresh on that front. I'm going to briefly mention once again the two different kinds of participants that we're looking for. And so on the one hand, we are looking to interview farmers. And so this includes people who are producing food for human consumption, folks who are either going online, need to go online, or have enough product and interest to go online, but have not managed to yet. And so we're really trying to get a sense for, what worked, what didn't, what's missing, what's needed. We're also looking for folks who are either currently engaged in direct sales to consumers or are intending to pivot to direct sales. And as I've mentioned before, we are trying to capture, the whole United States, but we acknowledge that there's a lot of diversity and variation within the country as a whole. And so we want to try and actually cluster it into a couple of different subregions, and that will actually play out in the way in which we will prioritize interviews. And so I'll have a little bit about that on the next slide. On the other side, we are looking to interview farm supporters as well. And so I just wanted to mention these 6 categories just because it would be helpful if you have ideas on who we should be interviewing to have these 6 categories in your minds of people that we're trying to reach out to be able to get a little bit more information about not necessarily, firsthand information on what is happening in the farm, but also what is happening once food leaves the farm gate and is on its way to different types of consumers and different types of buyers. And so we're really hoping to get a better sense for what are some of these supply chain disruptions that have been happening, that might be able to be something that we can mediate through the design of thoughtful technologies or community coordination processes. So from there, I wanted to just now start to share a little bit about the actual logistics of engaging in the study. So we have a link for folks to sign up for an interview. It's on the screen right now, but for those of you who are on the phone, I'll just mention it. It's bit.ly/talkaboutfood. All of this information will be on the website, and so you don't have to worry about memorizing all of the links. I'll show you a couple of the places that you can go to try and actually sign up for different types of things. So what will the process entail? Once you've signed up for an actual study, we will call you to schedule a time. We are going to begin with the Midwest. And so, just because we've been working closely with Tamara and Michael from the Diversified Food and Farming Systems team here. And so we would like to at least be able to start with our local community. And then next up, I know we've had a lot of folks on the calls from the Northeast, so we want to make sure that we move to the Northeast next. And then Juliet's been working hard on making sure that we have good representation in the West. And so she will then take us to the Best Coast or the West Coast to go see what's going on in the Pacific West. And so that's sort of the routing that we will take for at least the first 3 regions. So I have a couple of feelers out to folks in other regions, but we're holding off on actually scheduling things until we actually have the quotas met. And so the way in which that works is, once we have at least 10 farmers in a region, I'll schedule those calls. So obviously we'll just start by scheduling the Midwestern calls, but that's sort of what will determine when we turn on the next region. And so this shouldn't really affect you for the most part. In the sign up form, when you go to actually sign up for an interview, you can basically tell us whether you're available, within the next 2 weeks or within the next 2 months. And we can also use that to then determine, how can we fit into your schedule best. And so that's at least a little bit about how the scheduling will happen. So we'll call you up, we'll send you some information, we'll set up a specific time, and then the interview itself will be about 2 hours long. I've completely cleared out my schedule for this, and so it'll basically be whenever you're available. So if that's at 6 a.m., I will wake up. If that is at 11 p.m., I will be awake. And so I want to say that just to make sure that it's clear that, we really want to make sure that we are fitting into your schedules, or your community's schedules, depending on who ends up signing up for these calls. Any questions on this so far, or does anyone see any red flags that might be potential challenges as we begin to roll out the interview signups? Cool. I'm going to take that as it seems okay so far. So we'll start rolling with it and see what breaks and then fix it from there. So that's just a little bit about the logistics of the study. We do need to spread the word a little bit. And so we've got a whole bunch of information available for you to be able to share with your different communities. And so I'll actually just pop out of this for a second so that I can show you where that information is. And so on the website, there's now a share button right up the top. That share button has a link to each of the flyers that I've mentioned for you to be able to actually share with your community. So you can either, right click and save this image and then send it in an email, or download a PDF and then attach that to something. If you do want the raw text of anything, and it's a little slow, so it's taking a while to load. But if you do want the raw text for anything, you should be able to just yank it out of here, or just shoot me and Juliet an email, and we'll be very happy to send it along to you. We also have it in here in case you want to, so that should at least enable you to be able to send some stuff out. And so right now we do have one Twitter and one Instagram post out in the world, just so that way if you just also want to go in and reshare those, feel free to do that. But also just feel free to send introduction emails directly to me. And so, if you think there's somebody who might be awesome for us to talk to or has a really valuable perspective, then feel free to just send that along, and I'll be sure to follow up. And then Juliet and I will take over from there. Cool. Any questions about this part of things, or are there particular kinds of resources that would be more helpful for you to be able to share with your communities? Okay. Well, so everything is also, it should be able to print really easily. So you should just be able to actually take this and print it out. So if you want to take it to your farmers markets or any other places where people are gathering ish in person, feel free to take some of these materials with you. Okay. So, one of the biggest questions that I had for today was actually trying to get a better sense for who you think we should be talking to about resilient food. So, I know we've had a few discussions in the past about different types of growers that we should be talking to and different types of communities that we'll be reaching out to. But I wanted to take a moment to actually just see if people on the call today had some ideas for things that you thought that were missing or people that you think we should be specifically talking to. Okay. No worries. I assume that we will have plenty discussion over the email. And so I will leave these prompts up just for you to think about. So you have my email address, you know how to get a hold of me and Juliet. And so if you think there are particular types of groups of people that we should be contacting, please let us know. And then I think also if there are particular places that you think we should be sending our calls for participation, please let us know. We're really trying to make sure that we are hearing voices that are not always represented. And so we want to make sure that, if there are communities that you feel passionately about, that we should, that we should be reaching out to them and making sure that we hear what they have to say about challenges.
Yes,
Helen,
and Kita, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
um, um, I'm hesitant to say things because I don't know who you're dealing with now, like which resources like people are this person's experiencing now. Make a list, but I was wondering who you're reaching out to now. You have contacts in each of the regions, right?
Yeah, so my apologies, Linda. You cut out earlier, but if I heard the last part of your question, you said it would be helpful to know who we're reaching out to now so that you know who is not.
I suggest, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So right now we're primarily reaching out to through a couple of different mailing lists. So the first one is actually this mailing list. So I'll be sending out the information to this full group. The second one is through the Diversified Food and Farming Systems group through Purdue. And so that should be getting the email, getting the word out to farmers primarily within the Midwest who work with Purdue Extension. The third one that we're also doing, and let me just see if okay, the third one, I have a very short list that we just started putting together. But the third one is through the GOAT community. So this is the Gathering for Open Ag Tech community. And that is primarily going to be reaching out to developers and people who are involved on more of the tech side of tools and more of the tech side in food. And then we're now just specifically trying to reach out to different extension folks to be able to then propagate out to farmers. So we're not directly contacting farmers except for folks who are on these calls.
Okay, so all the extension people you're reaching out to in each of the states?
We have not yet compiled a full list of them. So right now I have extension folks here in Indiana. We are in talks with some folks in California, some folks in the
Mm.
Northeast, but it's not a fully comprehensive list. And so it's one of those things where as people start to provide suggestions of who we should reach out to, I'm hoping that I can then create a list so that way we're not inadvertently sending the same 10 farmers the same 30 emails about the study.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I had a couple ideas maybe. So I'm from Vermont, and there's I'm not sure how much you're kind of delving into the uh, labor angle, but there's a organization called Justicia Migrante. So it's this migrant justice. I have to look up the URL, but they are pretty squarely focused on representing um, migrant workers, primarily in dairy and in Vermont, since dairy is so big there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know of some food hubs in the Northeast, especially like kind of northern parts of Vermont, where there's kind of more of a food desert landscape.
Mm-hmm.
I could send those Northeast contacts.
That would be fantastic. One of the things that I have asked at least the leadership team for the qualitative research group so far to do is actually tell us who they're contacting so that way I can keep track. And so, one thing that I would invite folks on this call or folks who are listening to this recording later on to do is if you do want to CC me and Juliet on any email that you send out, if it's okay with you, we can then make sure that we don't double up on things down the line. So I don't know if that's something that would be helpful, but I just wanted to provide that as an option. And if it turns out to be particularly tricky, I'll try to actually then just set up a spreadsheet so people can just tell us who they're contacting, so that way we don't double up again. But for now, I think because we are a fairly small group, I'm more concerned about being able to reach out to enough people than overlapping too much. But again, the whole point of these community calls is to have your input into what you think makes sense. And so if you have thoughts on what works better, please feel free to provide some guidance there too.
And Kita, is there a way, are you wanting people to reach out themselves versus have us do it? I guess we're right now we're asking who should we be talking to about resilient food?
Yeah.
And so in this conversation, are we trying to encourage like Linda and Ben to reach out to their communities, or are we trying to get notes of those communities so we can reach out ourselves?
Yeah, I would suggest that if you are comfortable sharing the message about this yourself, that would be great because you're already working with those communities. If the overhead for doing that is high, like if that's a lot of work, that's when I'm suggesting just feel free to introduce us and we'll make sure that the community gets the information that we need. But like, for example, and Vermont's a great example of this, both in Vermont and Virginia, we have a couple of colleagues who have actually been sending out information about the project to the different mailing lists. And so that's sort of roughly the approach that I'm suggesting is that if there's already a group that you work with that you think has folks that might be really interested in this or might be folks who would provide really great perspectives, then that would be a really great time for you to just directly connect. So it's as always with this project, it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure of whatever you think the right answer is for the community that you're talking about or thinking of.
Now, just to follow up on that, just because you had mentioned not wanting to reach out to the same groups of people multiple times and,
Yeah.
overwhelm them with information, are we wanting community members who are reaching out to their own communities to then let us know that that's what they've done so we can kind of keep track so we don't accidentally do the same thing? Or
So I was also leaving that as an option. So if you
okay.
would like us to keep track, feel free. But I also acknowledge that there might be situations where you'd like to have those conversations in private and share these messages on your own without necessarily including us. That makes it easier for people to also not opt in. And so I want to make sure that you have both options, right? If you'd like us to keep track of who you're talking to or who you're sending the message out to, feel free to tag us, email us, copy us. If not, please feel free and go ahead and just share this with your communities.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. So if you do have more ideas about, who you think we should be talking to, feel free to let us know. If it's also even just categories of people, so types of people. So I put an example here of like mid-sized meat producers. Make sure you just let us know. And that way we can be careful to make sure we're actually covering these different types of user groups. Okay. As always, when talking about the qualitative research team, I do want to leave put some information up about joining the research team. So I mentioned that, we're working with the folks here at Purdue Extension, and I would say in a lot of ways they're our regional coordinators to try and make sure that we are hearing the voices of Midwestern farmers. And so similarly, we're looking for coordinators in other regions of the United States, right? Even the Midwest is a pretty big space. And so it would be ideally nice to have folks who understand their local context really well. And so if you have ideas of folks, or if you're listening to the recording later and you see yourself as somebody who might be willing to serve as a regional coordinator, we'd love to hear from you, because we are hoping to be able to do some of that regional recruitment. And also to be able to gain insights from you about what the context is for the area that you're farming in, that you're working in, the people that you're working with. And so, as usual, if you have thoughts on this, feel free to contact us for information. Contact us for more information, and we can set up a one-on-one discussion to figure out, what the low to as much as you like effort window actually looks like. Okay, so I will just quickly show you a little bit more about how you can sign up for an interview. So if you go to the resilientfood.org website, there's a button right out here. It says sign up for an interview. Down here as well is a little bit more information. Both of these will take you to the same spot. If you want to first learn more, you can always go back to the qualitative research study page and read again about what we're looking for and what we're trying to do. But again, there's always going to be a sign up for an interview button, and it will basically take you to a form that looks like this. And this was the approval that we were waiting for, was to be able to release this form out. And so from here, there'll be some information about, we'll ask a few questions based on whether you're a farmer or a farm supporter. And then at the end of it, we'll provide some study information, and that's when we'll then reach out to you. And so it shouldn't take you too long. I believe it should take under 10 minutes. Some of the pages are a little text heavy, but I had to have some of that language in here. And so, if as you're going through this, you have any issues or have any questions, please feel free to contact myself and Juliet, and we'll be sure to make sure that we answer any of your questions or help you through the process. And so it's hopefully not too much overhead to sign up for an interview. It's a button click, and then a 2-hour conversation after that. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on the qualitative interview? I heard someone.
This is Jeannie in Missouri, and I'm on the web, and I clicked on the sign up for an interview, and it went to page not found. Is that because you're on it?
It should not. Which button did you click?
I'm on your main page, and I'm under participate in an interview, sign up for an interview.
That is an issue on my part.
Okay.
I had just updated the links this morning, and so I'm just going to flag that as one that I need to fix. Would you mind trying to click a different button? Let's say the one that's up here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I did already go to the flyers you were just talking about, so I got to those. Okay. But you mean the button on these 4 drop downs about contribute?
Just this big one over here that's just in the main banner.
Okay, I'm looking on my computer, not on your call, because I'm on the phone.
Right. Okay,
I'm
that
on
makes
the phone.
sense.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking.
Sorry, go ahead.
So let's see. Oh, now that's interesting. Okay, so this up on the banner, it works to get to sign up for an interview. It's under the participate in an interview lower down that the button doesn't work.
So, and actually, if I just take a moment, I might be able to even fix that, because it shouldn't be too much.
Join the conversation works. So it's just that one.
Perfect. I'm glad we tested this out here.
I think it's really hard to keep all this stuff in order with itself.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I believe if you try now, it should work.
Okay, let's see.
Here's to hoping I was quick enough.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. still says not found. We can screw around with this later, though, if you want.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring us back then. I believe it might just need to refresh, but let's handle that during the discussion portion of today. And so I'll just quickly finish up. I only have a little bit more, and it's mostly reminders for the full group. And so the first reminder is, we do have the Resilient Food and Tech Community Library. I know Jeannie mentioned it earlier as something that she was browsing through. And so please, if you have some time, feel free to go in, take a look, contribute to it if you can. The link is on the main website, as always, under this area over here. And so if you go all the way to the bottom, you should be able to submit a resource. The last piece I have for today is actually we've put together a quick little feedback form so that you can tell us how we can improve your experience of participating in this project. We will be sending this out via email as well after this call when we send out the recording. But if you go to this link, it's bit.ly/resilientfoodfeedback. It's a super quick forum just to tell us, whether or not these community calls and our emails and the information on the website is helping you, gain any insights into this project or participate in a way that is meaningful or useful to you and your community. And so that's just a really quick form that we have over there. And so then now looking to next week, we're hoping to begin interviews. So this week, the name of the game is spreading the word out and sharing the love about the interviews. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on. We are going to have the software group meeting on Monday at 11 a.m. And so for anyone on the call or who's listening to this recording later, please feel free to let me know if you'd like to join us. And we'll be focusing on the updating of the update. We'll be focusing on the mapping the technology efforts. So then after that, we'll come back around to the next steps for the Mapping Community Food Pathways project. And hopefully I'll have some updates for you on next week's community call. So that's the long and short of what I have for this week. We're going to do something a little different this time. So we'll have we'll do our open time for community discussion, but I'm actually going to stop recording so we can just have a slightly less formal discussion. And so I will end today's call by saying thank you so much, or at least the recorded part of today's call, by saying thank you for listening, and hopefully you got the information you're looking for. And if you need anything else, feel free to contact me. My information is in the bottom. And with that, I'm going to